You are loved with an everlasting love. That's what the Bible says. And underneath are the everlasting arms. This is your friend Elisabeth Elliot, talking again today with Walt and Valerie Shepard, my son-in-law and daughter. Walt, I have a tough question that people are always asking me about how you balance your time with your family and your time at work. And since you happen to be a pastor, it seems to me that that's probably a really crucial question, because a pastor doesn't just have a 40-hour-a-week job, does he?
No, it's hard to call it a 40-hour week. I think it really helped us early in our marriage to sit down and decide what's going to be most important. In the church in which I grew up, I noticed that there was a trend that you always kind of go into some sort of a flow upward and look for the next rung and look for the next large church. And I remember sitting down with Val, and we said together, let's don't do that. Let's decide that we are going to make the family our priority. And it may mean we don't get some huge church someday. And it may mean I won't be the real popular or real successful pastor with a tall steeple. And it's kind of laughable out here in California. There are not a whole lot of steeples anywhere. But it helped us to sit down and say, this is going to be the most crucial area. This will be priority, our family. And because it is, I began to see that there were times when I'd have to say no to various expectations that congregations had for me. That's not the most popular stand, because again, what was working in my life during those years, those early years of our marriage especially, was this definite desire to perform, very desperate desire to achieve and to be successful as a pastor. And it wasn't until, sadly to admit this, but it wasn't until about 3 years ago that I learned that I don't have to perform. My acceptance with God is already secure by Christ's work for me. I don't have to perform in order to get accepted. And this began to give me more freedom with the present congregation that I'm in right now. Some elders helped me sit down and look at this issue as recent as 3 years ago. And they got around me on an elders retreat, and they prayed for me. And then they said, Walt, we want to enable you. We want to set you free to be exactly who you are, nothing more. And of course, I'm a sinner still. But it helped me just to pursue the gifts and strengths that the Lord had given me and quit worrying about my weaknesses. The amazing, or the immediate result of that was I could come home literally singing when I was normally tied up in a meeting and frustrated because we weren't going anywhere. And of course, it does help to have an assistant who has a gift for administration, where I'm a little weak. He's very strong, and it has tremendously helped me to be able to say, I can now say no more effectively and effectually, and leave that stuff at the church and go home and be all there for my family. There are obviously some exceptions to that, because phone calls still come to the home, and I have to tell the kids, wait, or I have to tell my wife, I'm sorry, I'm tied up at this point, I'm going to have to go through with this. But by and large, there's a new freedom in our house as of 3 years ago, wouldn't you say?
Yes, definitely. I remember that there were many, many nights that you had meetings, and many, many mornings that you were gone early for breakfast meetings, and it was simply the fact that you were gone too much. And now I feel that you believe your family is such a priority that you make as many nights possible free to stay at home. And you also, you and your assistant and the deacons and elders have seen that meetings don't really accomplish that much. It used to be that you'd have an elders meeting once a week all the time. Now you have them once a month, and you feel like you accomplish a lot more in once-a-month meetings than you did every week. So I'm thankful that the Lord has helped you to be able to not have so many meetings. I'm sure that you did some good with all those men that you met with every morning, but you were gone an awful lot. And even sometimes I wonder, is he more at home than he should be at church? I'm even concerned, and yet I have to leave that to Walt and in the Lord's hands.
Do you feel, Val, that it's important that your children should learn that there are sacrifices that have to be made in the Lord's work? I don't think that it's possible ever to make a hard and fast rule. You will have X number of nights at home and
Right.
X number of hours per day. Do you think it's important, and do they understand that your daddy has very important work to do, sometimes emergencies?
I think that's a better word than balance. I don't know if any of us really balance it. It's not a balancing act. I think it was you who taught me long time ago that the Christian life isn't a tightrope walk. And I praise God for that, because it's just so unbiblical. Sacrifice, though, that's in the Bible, and that's what it comes down to.
But can you be more specific that the Christian life is not a tightrope? Because everybody talks about that all the time. How much do you sacrifice for your church, and how much do you sacrifice for your family? And why do you say it's not balance that we're looking for? It's simply that we need to sacrifice.
We have to make hard choices. We have to make hard choices. And I would just say that it's not so much that I'm proud that I found a balance. It's just that I'm very grateful that you and I have discovered a priority that's going to work for us. And it means sometimes that we don't get to have a week like we fashioned it or we planned it. It may mean that some weeks in a month, and at least 1 week in a month, I am at the church an awful lot, because I will have lined up those meetings. But I'm just saying that the hope here, the encouragement is that it's not just up to me to skillfully weigh all these carefully wrought out concerns in such a manner that I won't trip and fall. I will fall, and I'm just grateful that we've been freed up from this idolatry of this performance thing where I was scared to death of my own shadow, just so worried about it.
Years ago, I had the chance to ask Billy Graham how in the world he balanced his priorities. He, being the father of a family, a big family, and having his tremendous global responsibilities. And he said, I don't have any answer except prayer. And in my life, I've discovered after too many years, I guess I should have learned it long ago, but I don't really think you can make a hard and fast rule about anything like that. As you say, you do your best to spend time with your family and do what you're supposed to do at the church, but there are the exceptions that probably come up practically every week, aren't there, where something changes and you really expect that God is going to show you what to do. It's a matter of prayer, and it's a matter of daily, continual prayer. Lord, show me what to do today. Help me to be faithful to my church, faithful to my family, faithful to my neighborhood, and all these other things.
Well, I think the starting point, though, is the one that you really asked me about, and that is that, and this isn't very popular. I'm not expecting everyone to go huzzah when I say this, but you've got to decide as a couple what is the most important, because I'll never forget having freshly arrived here, a pastor came up to me and he found out how many children we had. We had 5 at that time. And he says, Walt, you won't last a year here. And I said, what? What are you talking about? And he said, well, we only have 2 children because this ministry I am married to. And I said, well, wait a minute, where does your wife fit in this picture? He says, oh, she's right at my side, but we are married to this church. And I said, no, you want to break that down for me and help me here? And he said, well, you've got to decide. You're either going to succeed out here or land flat on your face, and you don't have time for a big family in this particular arena. But I really, I think it is a tough choice that couples have to make, and they have to make it prayerfully together, because the pressure I think a lot of guys who are having terrible marriage problems, and their pastors, are men who are finding it much easier to be successful at the church than to really be given to that first calling. And I will guarantee you there are a lot of people who will argue with that. Just won't agree.
Well, when I pray for you, as I do every day, I just pray that the Lord will make you a faithful father, faithful husband, faithful pastor, and faithful friend.
The Lord, as He frees us up from this bondage to being successful, He gives us the grace to simply walk by faith and believe that He is leading us one step at a time, that not only is He leading us, but from behind us, He's prompting us to do what seems to be the right step next. And so we're not so concerned. I know for many years I was most concerned about being a successful mother. And to me that meant having perfect children. And Walt was most concerned about being a successful pastor. And so there was this conflict all the time of I'm not making it, and he was saying he's not making it. And now, as we've often said, in the last 3 years, we feel like the Lord has shown us that our marriage and our love for our children and the grace that He can bring through us to them is more important than being successful, quote unquote. And He simply wants us to be faithful.
I believe with all my heart that it is always possible to do the will of God. And it is certainly God's will for you to be faithful to your family and faithful to your church. And I think only God can show you how to do that.